Hi there. A couple of weeks ago, boy, did I nail it. And I was right. I talked about the fact that KNBR was down to a few choices, three in my mind, for its program director position that it was advertising for. And I said it was probably down to one of these three. I said Don Collins, Lee Hammer, and a guy named Bob Sargent. Now, none of these guys got the job. They ended up going internal. And they did so because they frankly don't have the money. But there's more to this story. They ended up giving the job, did KNBR and Cumulus, to a guy by the name of Mike Holler. Mike Holler has worked as a producer for Gary Radnich. He's been there for many years. He also is the executive producer of the 49ers broadcasts and works as the producer engineer with Greg Papa and Tim Ryan on the 49ers radio broadcasts. But that's, again, not the story. I want to talk to you today about a charade. A charade. They had this job opening because they haven't had a program director for some time now, for over a year. So they gave the job, it's not really a job, to this Brian Copeland, Cope-Dopes. That turned out to be a disaster. And he quit for a variety of reasons, mainly because they didn't have the money. He said some things that were not pleasing to conservative corporate Cumulus. So he went away. And they've had this job opening now for a few months. And here's the charade. Mind you, KNBR, so they're like the sports station that has the 49ers, the Giants. And that's how they make their cash. So, but they still have to have a program director, and they don't have a program director. So they put out a job search, which they have to do on all the business trades. And they ended up doing interviews with these folks, notably Don Collins and Lee Hammer. And again, they ended up giving the job to a guy by the name of Mike Holler for some Snickers bars and some extra little small token amount of money. They didn't have the money. But yet, and here's the charade, they interviewed, namely, the Cumulus market manager for San Francisco, Larry Bloomhagen. He interviewed Lee Hammer, and he interviewed a guy by the name of Don Collins. I don't know Collins, but I know Hammer. But I don't speak to Hammer. I haven't spoken to him for over a year since he started doing KGO, which was a few years ago. But Hammer was one of the folks that they fired back in December because they didn't have money. They had to do some trimming. They had to show the bankruptcy judge that they're making attempts to lessen money at KNBR. But here's the charade. They interviewed Hammer and this guy Collins, according to my sources, knowing full well, folks, they weren't going to hire these guys. These guys, one of them should have been hired because they have experience. They have the knowing. They have all the acumen, the chops, is the word I always use, to really be a real program director and not somebody like Copes, whose hire was strictly symbolic, and that blew up in their face. And they went with Mike Holler, and they're giving them a little extra money. It's not a lot of money. As I said, it's like a couple of Snickers bars because they don't have the money at Cumulus. Yet, they put these two radio broadcast veterans through the hoops in a position that they knew full well that they didn't have the means to make a hire. Why is this a big story? It is, folks, because from a professional standpoint, a professional standpoint, doing what they did and knowing full well that they weren't going to hire any of those, I figured that they didn't have the money. I knew full well that they didn't have the money. Yet they went through this charade, which is what it was, to be charitable, to fulfill a corporate mantra. That part I don't know. I do not know. But I do know this. They never, ever, ever were going to hire any of the three, two of which I nailed down. Because they are Cumulus. They're not radio people. They're hardly even broadcast people. They're there to make money, and they're not very good at that. But what is the result of all this? Oh, God, the industry chatter. And you're not going to see any of this, by the way, in the various trades who made the press release announcement that KNBR hired Mike Holler. They're going to use some banal quote, and you're going to get the story, but not the story that I get, which is one of the reasons among many that you come here. The charade, knowing full well they had no means necessary to hire either Lee Hammer or this guy Collins. It puts them in further embarrassment. It fulfills all the reputation that exists in the local and national industry that KNBR is a complete fraudulent outfit put forth mainly by Cumulus, its corporate owner that has all the radio acumen of a diseased yak. It's embarrassing. It's fraudulent. My opinion. You're damn right. It is indicative of a company that got a couple of decent ratings books and was literally trying to save time in order to get to the start of football season when they make their money. Even KNBR can't screw this up. They make their money on the football, on the 49ers. And they have all the ads going because football, the NFL is king. And if they really, really wanted a real program director, then they should have gone to Cumulus and say, Cumulus, we need some real money because we don't have the means to hire. Yet we're going to go through this charade, this hiring process that wasn't. And who did they piss off? Well, they pissed off Lee Hammer. They obviously pissed off this guy Collins, I'm hearing from my sources. And the worst part of all this is that if and when, and it'll be when, KNBR really truly does need a real program director, well, guess what the word is out there, folks, on the streets? Do you want to do business? Do you want to take a position with KNBR, knowing what is known now? And people know it. Now you know it, and I know it. It is beyond embarrassing. It's fraudulent. It's idiotic. It is pathetic. But then again, this is Cumulus, and oh yeah, this is KNBR, the sports bleeder